I am thrilled to be joined by Tina from Workjoy, as well as Mike and Sarah from Sigrid Group. Sigrid Group is a executive recruiting and consulting firm, really aiming to match top-notch, fantastic employees with great organizations and help everybody thrive. We're also partnering with the Talent Strategy Collection, which is a organization that believes that all companies, regardless of the size, should be able to have a talent life cycle that is something that is stellar. So they offer courses that will help any size HR, any size organization be able to learn and grow and continue to help their employees want to be somewhere, want to be at an organization. And so with that, I will go ahead and turn this over to Tina to introduce herself and lead us through our webinar today.
Let me get going. Huge thanks to Aaron, huge thanks to Sarah and Mike, and a special shout out to Mike as the founder of Sigrid Group, who is hosting us today. So what we're going to talk about, Aaron hit on some of this. We'll do some quick introductions. We'll talk about the why of today. We'll talk a little bit about hybrid. I will say, I'm not an expert in hybrid. I don't think any of us are an expert in hybrid because we're all still figuring it out. So I'm really curious and excited to hear from all of you about your own experiences with what we're calling hybrid. We'll talk about engagement. We've nicknamed it the stay conversation, but really this is about what gets people engaged, what makes them want to stick around in a job. And we'll have a little bit of practice and then we will wrap up. So this is me. Some of you who have seen this before are rolling your eyes. Some of you who have known me for a while and know I have birds are laughing at the picture of my children. But I've been doing this work for more than 20 years. Mike and I actually met in graduate school, which I will not say how long ago that was, but it was a long time ago. I have worked in big corporate jobs like PricewaterhouseCoopers, Toyota, SAP, Fabletics. I've worked with Savage. In 2017, I actually founded my own practice called Workjoy because I believe that work should bring us joy. And I've been seeking that my entire career. Workjoy does one-on-one coaching. We do one-to-many training. We offer speaking, and we offer program development and management. So we touch all different aspects of leadership development. I'm a consultant with Sigrid Group. I love partnering with Sigrid to help extend both of our reach. Sigrid is based in Michigan, but they also have a national and international focus. I was teaching for the last 5 years with Loyola Marymount University. So I like to say that nothing scares me anymore. Once you've taught undergrads during the pandemic, nothing scares you. No adult training will ever scare me again. I went to school back east. So for any East Coasters on the call, and you know who you are, I went to Virginia, and then I went to school in Michigan with with Mike. I love speaking, despite me not being able to use the right words like Matt, and just came back from the SHRM conference in Vegas, which was in June. And I live in here in LA. Yes, it is warm out here, but I actually think it might be a little cooler in LA than it is in many other parts of the country right now. So that is me. I am having fun with QR codes. So if you scan that and we're not connected on LinkedIn, I think many of us already are, you can scan that and connect directly to me. Okay, let's talk about the why for today. We are here because hybrid isn't going away. I have been very entertained by the articles that we read on LinkedIn and elsewhere about all of these CEOs demanding that their people come back in the office. And they're using excuses like, our culture needs us physically together, or we do our best work together, or the only way to collaborate, the only way to be innovative is if we're all physically together. It's as if these organizations are using this magical Etch-a-Sketch to erase the last 3 years. And for many organizations, the last few years resulted in pretty great profits and pretty great business outcomes. And trying to, as I've said many, many times, put toothpaste back in the tube. But hybrid is the new normal. And we will talk a little bit about data to back that up. However, with hybrid, we have new expectations related to work, and many of us will fight for those expectations. We will leave employers who aren't able to meet us where we want to be. We want the flexibility. We want equitable pay. We're seeing that. I live in LA. We have a writer's strike and the Screen Actors Guild right now. LA is not quite paralyzed because we're not a single industry town as many people think we are, but it is very, very visible, this fight for workers' rights. And I think we're seeing that no matter where we are. So coupled with those two things, overall engagement peaked in 2020, according to our wonderful friends at Gallup, and it's actually decreasing. So we're back on the downward slope. It never really got more than about 36% engaged overall based on surveys, but now that number is dropping. So work as we know it has fundamentally changed, and many of us are still trying to catch up. So what do we know about hybrid? It's not going anywhere. We cannot put toothpaste back in the tube. I've tried. I'm what I like to call frugal, some people call cheap. And if I over squeeze toothpaste, I try to put it back in there. It's really, really hard. And sometimes it just can't be done because once it's out, it's out. And yet a lot of organizations, as we've said, are yearning for the past. They're yearning for this magical place called the office. Great show, where everybody came to work every day. We all got along. We loved being together. We collaborated. We were innovative, all of these things. And yet we all know as consultants, as leaders, as HR professionals, as coaches, as employees, that that wasn't always the case. So I love data, and Gallup is such a remarkable source of workplace data. So I've put some links in here if you want to go look at some of this source data directly. But we've set new expectations for work. Work has fundamentally changed, and people want to stay hybrid. So according to Gallup surveys, and they keep surveying people, and they have been doing this since well before the pandemic, all through and now post, that as of May 2023, a lot of people are expecting to work remotely, and it's also where they want to work. And even look at the difference between where they expect to work and where they want to work. More and more people want to work hybrid, or they want to work remote. Again, if their job allows them to do so. There are some jobs that we know require physical presence on site. However, for jobs that are remote enabled, people want to have the autonomy and the flexibility. So as we say, toothpaste flows one way. This is actually interesting too, that the highest engagement is from folks who are working remotely or hybrid. And I think these numbers are very telling. So on-site employees whose work is not able to be done remotely report the lowest engagement. Whereas that blue line, which is hybrid, and that green line, which is exclusively remote, they have the highest. Look at the drop for those employees who are forced to be on site or required to be on site, but their jobs are remote capable, which means that they're not working a counter that requires in-person customer interaction. They're being asked to come to a workplace when they don't really need to in order to do their jobs well. And look at the dip in that engagement level. I don't think anyone's surprised by these numbers. But why do you think engagement levels for remote or hybrid employees is higher? What's the why behind this? Why are people reporting higher levels of engagement if their job allows them to be remote or hybrid? So Mike says more personal autonomy for employees. Absolutely. Autonomy is a huge intrinsic motivator for humans. The autonomy to do our work in the way that we are best able to be able to bring our best selves to our work. The flexibility to balance our home life, our personal life, and our work life. So here's some why. People want to avoid a long commute. I live in Los Angeles. I have not worked, well, I've worked hybrid, but I've worked in offices, but I made a point of only working in organizations that were no more than 10 or 11 miles from my house. I just didn't want to face that drive. And yet there are people who will spend 2 hours each way in the car. People are saying that it's better for their overall well-being, and they're talking about flexibility. And yet people like hybrid because they want the option. They want the option of being in person when and where it makes sense. And they want the option because it allows them to balance productivity and connection. We want workplaces that support productivity, flexibility, and connectivity. Many of us had a taste of those expectations being met during the pandemic, and we don't want those qualities about work taken from us. So I love this quote. I'm not a big fan of reading slides, so I won't. So I will paraphrase this. But what I think is great about hybrid work is that it's forcing organizations to be more intentional about how they bring people together. Now, not all of them. I have gone to organizations where everybody is in person, and yet most people spend time on their screens with the employees who are still remote. So people are saying, I now have to drive an hour each way to spend 4 hours of my day on Zoom calls with people. That doesn't seem like a good investment of time. Hybrid workers feel more supported. They feel like their organizations are paying attention to their needs, that organizations are hearing their need for flexibility. They're feeling like the organization cares about them. And in turn, when our needs are being met, we're more willing to offer ourselves or more of ourselves. There's better alignment between our personal values and priorities and the mission and vision of the organization. Okay, so let's go to engagement. So that's a little bit about hybrid. I don't think any of that is overly shocking. I think most of us are steeped in the world of humans at work, and we're not surprised by the data that shows that hybrid is here to stay. People want it. People are asking for it. Many organizations are resisting, but many organizations are leaning all the way into it. And then engagement tends to be higher for those employees who are remote or hybrid if their work allows it. No surprises. Let's talk about engagement. I love talking about engagement. I talked about this at the SHRM conferences. If anybody wants to see copies of my presentations from the past two SHRM conferences about this, happy to share. You can ping me afterwards. Engagement describes our emotional involvement in our work. It is about how we invest emotionally. It is about how we commit. It is about how enthusiastic we are. It's about our connection to some kind of higher purpose. And according to Gallup numbers, it continues to fall. Engagement for the last many, many years has hovered around 30-something%. It peaked at 36% in 2020. It's falling and is about 32% in the US, lower globally, but about 32% in 2022. That means more than 2/3 of the employees surveyed are moderately or very disengaged in their work. And disengagement, according to Gallup estimates, and this might be a little bit generous, but it's almost $8 trillion in lost productivity, which I think is quite scary. So what this means is that engagement is not a program. Engagement is not an event. Engagement is something deeper than that. And we're not making progress with engagement because we forget that engagement is personal. I've led HR teams. I know there are folks on the call who are HR leaders, who are HR consultants, and we tend to survey to get data and to get insights, and then we design big programs. Now, that is not necessarily wrong, but they're not working. If the Gallup numbers hold true, despite all of our best efforts, those numbers are going back down to where they have been historically. We try to appeal to the needs of many with a lot of these programs, and yet we forget that engagement is very personal and it is a very human challenge. And what makes me want to stay with a job is going to be different than what makes Mike stay with a job, or Louise stay with a job, or Sarah stay with a job, or Skylar stay with a job, because we're all different. And trying to make all of us engage with the same programs isn't working. So we need human solutions to a very human problem. And so one of the most powerful solutions, and it's been around for a very long time, is the role of the leader, specifically the conversations leaders can have with their people. I love this quote. It's from a book called Leading with Heart, and it talks about the critical importance of managers having conversations with their people. Now, I don't think any of us are having a lightning bolt of realization about this. Of course, this makes sense. That leaders unlock creativity in others by having conversations that make them feel productive, safe, and appreciated. So if we know that this makes sense, and we even have data from Gallup that backs this up, so according to Gallup, 8 in 10 employees who report having meaningful conversations in the past week with their manager are engaged. That doesn't matter how many days they were in the office. It transcends. Are you remote? Are you in person? Are you hybrid? However, only 16% of employees say that the last conversation with their manager was extremely meaningful, which means that conversations are happening, but they tend, not surprisingly, to be very focused on what did you get done and what did you do wrong, versus meaningful conversations that address how do we optimize your strengths? How do we celebrate your successes? What do you need from work? How do we align what the organization needs from you and what you need from us? So I'm going to turn to Mike here because Sigrid Group actually offers engagement survey solutions. And this interesting result came from their 2022 survey. Mike, when you saw this, A, were you surprised? And B, how do you interpret this?
So yeah, thank you. It was, I think, surprising in the magnitude. So we looked at employees and asked during the survey, are you considering leaving in the next 12 months? And then, one of the other questions was how often do you meet with your manager? How engaged are you? Those sorts of things. And we found, just like I said, very kind of strong correlation with managers having one-on-one meetings with their employees, and everything from whether they're considering, as you can see here, whether they're considering leaving in the next month or next 12 months, how engaged they are in the work, whether they are spending time on tasks that they're passionate about, and also how developed they feel they are and how ready they are for the next step. All of those things tied in very directly with whether their managers were meeting with them regularly.
So yeah, I love these results. I love it when different surveys sort of echo the results of other surveys, because it's just layer upon layer of validation of our hunches or our inklings or our intuition about what's going on in the workplace. And then we have data to back it up. So for those people who are regularly meeting with their manager, they're much less likely, according to these survey results, to be considering leaving. If you're not meeting with your manager, it probably means communication has broken down, communication is inconsistent, and you're wondering, what am I doing here? Who would even care if I left? Okay, so I fully embrace my Gen X roots. And so this is about let's get meaningful versus let's get physical, but we're going to get meaningful now. For those of you from Gen Z who are going, who is this woman? We will have a special webinar about the power of Olivia Newton-John, but that is for another day. I love me a good framework. I love to be straightforward and I love to be simple. And this is one that I have been using for a long time and it works. And it's a simple 2x2. And we're going to be walking you through this as a tool, both for yourselves, but also to share with the people in your lives. If you're a consultant, you share it with your clients. If you're an HR leader, share it with your managers. If you are a leader yourself, share it with your teams. But we're also going to be applying it to ourselves. So what are we talking about here? We are more likely to be engaged if our needs are being met, for the most part, by what a company has to offer. If I need autonomy, I want the company to offer that to me. If I need a certain level of pay, I want the company to provide that. If I need certain levels of flexibility, if I need certain development challenges, if I need certain leadership, if I need to work with organizations that are aligned with different missions or visions, I want those organizations to offer that. Pretty straightforward. I also want to be valued for what I offer to the organization. I want my offering to be needed by the organization. I want the organization to need, value, appreciate, celebrate my expertise, my experience, my skill set, my sense of humor, my personality, my knowledge, skills, and attributes. So simple alignment here. I want my needs to be matched by what the company has to offer for the most part. And I want what I offer for the most part to be valued by the organization. If those matches are happening, we are much more likely to be engaged. So let's talk through this. And I am going to put some of you on the spot, but it's just going to be in chat. Sample questions. How do you ask people about what they need? You know, it's really weird because you'd think that this would be something that would be easy for people to answer. And yet I do a lot of coaching and it's hard to talk about what we need. It's hard to give ourselves permission to verbalize what we need from anything, what we need from a relationship, what we need from work, what we need from our lives. So I give everybody on the call permission to tap into your needs. What do you uniquely need from work? So some sample questions to ask as a leader would be, what do you need to be your best? What flexibility, what autonomy do you need? I went back in-house during the pandemic to help an organization build a leadership development function. So I was working with them as a consultant. It made more sense for me to come on. That was great. I needed a lot of flexibility and a lot of autonomy. And that was that I raised that pretty early. And when I didn't get it, it was sort of what led me down the path of maybe it's time for us to part ways. What interests me? What motivates me? What do I need to feel connected to the culture of this organization? What factors in my job are most important to me? What do I need to feel safe at work? So everybody on the call, I want you to pick one question on here and answer it. But I want all of us to just practice answering a question about what do I need from work? While you're doing that, I'll tell you a story about this organization where I went back in-house for a little while during the pandemic. Huge warehouse kind of place, the place with like exposed pipes and big cavernous kind of thing. And I went in and I had a physical reaction when they showed me where my desk would be, which was just this row of desks. not even cubes, just rows of desks. And I was like, and I said, I need alone time. Despite this extrovert, kind of persona, I actually need to go work by myself. And a lot of the work that I do is heads down PowerPoint development and also one-on-one conversations with people. I can't do that in a warehouse cavern at a desk. So that was something that I knew that I needed from work, and I had to address that really early on. And fortunately, they were able to provide that. So I had no qualms about basically just leaving and going to quiet places. But again, knowing these things about ourselves is really important. So again, a list of questions that you can ask your people to start tapping into what do you need from work. And this is about leaders getting curious. Not reading from, this going, what do you need from work, Mike? What would motivate you? Okay, that's really not going to fly. It's okay to have a little cheat sheet down here, but come from a place of curiosity. Pick the questions that really make you curious about what your employees are going to say. And the best thing you can do to create a safe space is to answer it yourself. So notice how I role modeled that. I talked about, hey, these are some things I need from work. Share that. Role model for your folks that it's okay to talk about your needs. Okay, so we already did that. My offer. What am I willing to give in exchange for the meeting of my needs? So what am I willing to give to the organization? And so questions that you can ask your people, and guess what? I am going to ask you to answer at least one of these. So start to think about in chat. When am I at my best? What are my strengths? What are my superpowers? What am I doing? Who am I doing it with? Where am I doing it when I feel the most engaged? In what roles do I add the most value? Some people might say, I add the most value if I'm able to lead people. Other people might say, I add the most value when I get to be an independent contributor. I don't want to manage people. How am I willing to adapt to hybrid work? Hey, the organization wants people back in the office 3 days. I can give you 2. Or you want me back Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Can we modify that and I do Tuesday, Thursday? Or Mondays are really best for me to come into the office because of XYZ. What skills do you want to develop? That's part of your offer too. Hey, I am willing to ramp up in these areas. I am willing to give you all of this in exchange for the organization meeting my needs. And I'll share one of mine as folks are typing. I don't have a lot of patience for forced social stuff, like forced happy hours, forced let's all get together and build a puzzle together. I have limited tolerance for that. The people on the call who know me are trying not to laugh. And yet, okay, I would go to the happy hours. But probably many of us remember the early days of the pandemic when it was like, let's do weekly virtual happy hours. I actually had to say to my boss, I'm like, I can't do that. Are you going to fire me if I don't come to the weekly trivia contest because the last thing I want to do on a Thursday at 4:30 is get back on a Zoom call. But I was willing to come to some of them. So that was part of my offer. And it was also part of how the organization was able to meet my needs for checking out of Zoomland. So again, questions you can ask about what is your offer and getting people to think about what they are able and willing and ready to contribute. On the flip side, guess what? The company needs things from their employees. This is actually the part of the meaningful conversation that I think many managers get right. This is about setting expectations. It's about clarifying those expectations. It is about holding people accountable. It is about giving actionable feedback. And it's about celebrating successes for a job well done. So the company needs different things from their employees. And it's a critical part of that meaningful conversation. Here's what we need from you. And how are you doing meeting those needs for us? And again, that goes back to the alignment with what somebody's able to offer. So if the organization says, look, things have changed, we really need you here at least 2 days a week. Here's why, here's what that's going to look like. That's something that the organization needs, and you're going to co-create it together, and you're going to align with what the employee is able to offer. Many of the best practices around hybrid talk about, when possible, co-creating the hybrid experience. What works for the organization and what works for the individual. Letting people feel that they have some agency in that versus something that's been mandated to them. These are management basics. These are the tent stakes. These are the table legs. These are the chair legs. Set clear expectations, review and revise them, share actionable feedback, and celebrate success. We could have an entire workshop on this, but my hunch is many of you have been leading these workshops. You've been receiving these workshops. This is just the basics of good management. So this is the part of that meaningful conversation that I think a lot of managers default to. Then we have what the company is able to offer. And many, many organizations got creative about what they offered their people. But guess what? Check in. What can the organization offer you to help meet your needs? What benefits are most appealing? What do you frequently use? What can we be doing more or less of? What are we not offering that might make you feel more excited about work? How many people had to ask their organizations, sometimes even beg their organizations for equipment to be able to work remotely? Whereas some organizations made it super easy for everybody to set up a remote workplace. What resources do you need? What materials do you need? What support do you need? How can we support your sense of belonging? But what is the company able to offer? And that is in big part the role of the leader, to almost be the bridge between the organizational offerings and the individual needs. The leader is in the middle there, saying, okay, I can be an advocate for you if this is something that you need. We see the leaders playing that role when it comes to advocating for promotions and for compensation. But thinking beyond money, thinking beyond reward, there are other ways of making an employee feel that sense of belonging. Okay, so let me stop there, because your job as a leader, all of us on this call are leaders in our own way. Some of us directly manage people, some of us influence leaders in our lives. But your job is to have these conversations. That 2x2, those 4 squares, incorporating questions from each of those areas into a meaningful conversation grounded in shared success. And guess what? Role model this by having the conversation with yourself. It's a really healthy exercise to step back and say, what do I need from work? And what am I getting? And what am I not getting? And what can I ask for? And what am I willing to give in exchange? So I love this. This is where coaching, tiptoes into the world of psychology. But most of us have these limiting beliefs that get in the way of us having these conversations, because this is a no-brainer, right? Nothing I've said is like a bolt of lightning from the sky. This all makes sense. There's data to back it up. So why are we not doing this? Sometimes I ask that. I beat my head going, why, oh, why, oh, why? I see it as job security, which is great. So I will have a job helping leaders figure this out. But I sometimes wonder, if I get it, why doesn't everybody else get it? A lot of reasons why. HR takes care of the engagement stuff, right? As a leader, I don't need to do that. I don't need to have these conversations. Engagement is in the realm of HR. HR is blamed for everything and gets no credit when things go well. I know. I know. But yeah, well, HR will fix engagement. And if it's going well, then hey, I don't need to do anything. Okay, another limiting belief is what if I say the wrong thing? Well, I don't want to have this conversation. Ooh, I don't, it sort of bored. It's a little bit of the I don't know how to have the conversation, but what if I say the wrong thing? What if I make things worse by even having the conversation? So I'm going to default to not having it. I'm going to default to just giving feedback on what the employee has done, point out what's not being done, and leave it there. Some leaders say, look, I don't have that kind of relationship with my team. Like, that's just not how we roll. I've been coaching a woman who, for the first time, is leading a team of all men. And I've heard her say that. Oh, that's just not that's just not how they roll. Like, I don't have those kinds of conversations. Partly because, well, I was raised to not talk about needs, desires, and feelings. Deep-rooted stuff. We don't talk about that at work. We don't talk about what we need. We don't talk about how we feel. And yet engagement is all about needs and feelings. Engagement is all about emotional commitment to work. I love this. Well, what if I open Pandora's box? What if I ask somebody what they need and I can't help them and I can't answer it? So Pandora, and I think in Greek mythology, opened up this box, and all the stuff came out. So sometimes it's better not opening the box. So yeah, what if somebody says, look, I really need a raise. I've been market testing my salary and I'm really low compared to what I could be making. That is a brilliant wake-up call for you to go, thank you so much for letting me know. Let me see what I can do. Let's see how we can make that work. If you can make something work, great. If you can't make something work, you celebrate that person's ability to go get more money elsewhere, because right now, as Zachary said, money is important. So I'm not good at these, sort of like what if I say the wrong thing? So out of sight, out of mind. I'm just not going to go there. And guess what? I might be having my own doubts and concerns about work. I'm figuring out this hybrid thing. I hate coming in the office 3 days a week. Or I don't understand why people don't come in the office every day. I love being here at the office. So I'm dealing with my own shit. I don't have the time. I don't have the effort. I don't have the emotional bandwidth to have these conversations. So the challenge here is break through our own limiting beliefs as a starting point and just taking that first step. So if you're working with leaders and they're going, I don't even know where to start, guess what? You start by scheduling the conversation. You start by writing the stuff down and practicing these conversations. This is why organizations retain coaches. Coaches are tremendous resources to help your leaders practice these conversations. HR leaders can be tremendous resources for helping leaders practice these conversations. As a leader, when you're in the conversation, acknowledge the weirdness. Like, look at the elephant in the room and say, yeah, it's a little weird having this conversation, but I know how important it is. And so let me know how I do. And I'd love to have this conversation with you and not at you. Learn from the experience and do it again. I'll tell you, some of the leaders that I've had in my life that are still in my life as mentors had these conversations with me. The leaders that I would not work for again if you paid me money did not have these conversations with me. I love this quote. It's from an Harvard Business Review blog, but I use this at the end of almost every training that I do now, which is this idea that practicing a new behavior takes time, it takes patience, and it's gonna feel wonky. It's gonna feel so weird to have these conversations as a leader. But I promise you, just like riding a bike, it's gonna get easier. And if you keep at it, it's just gonna be how you roll as a leader. But as a consultant, as a coach, as an HR leader, for all of you on the call, we're here to help leaders feel more comfortable. We might be holding their handlebars for a little while until they feel confident and get their alignment on that bike. So to wrap up, engagement is a very human solution. A human challenge. Engagement is all about emotional stuff. It's about our willingness to commit. It's the passion we feel. And yet we try to solve engagement with unhuman programs that are designed to accomplish business results without maybe paying attention to the humans at the core. So engagement is personal, which is my tagline of late. It means something different to each of us, especially as work continues to evolve and as work continues to mean something different to each of us. If you take away nothing from today, I think that is a powerful thing to pull. We need to get comfortable talking about what we need from work and what we can offer to work in exchange for those needs being met. So that's on us. That's on us as individuals. And as leaders, we have to become more comfortable being curious and asking questions as part of meaningful conversations. And we're more likely to stay, we're more likely to stick around, we're more likely to be engaged when our needs are met, when we can balance flexibility and productivity, and when our strengths are being used. And that is regardless of, am I working remotely, am I working on site, or am I working hybrid? So it's almost like we've come full circle to a lot of the tried and true tenets of leadership development. That's what's going to help us navigate our hybrid workplace reality. Okay, so if you want to learn more, lots of resources for you. So I put 3 of them here. Many of you on the call already know one or more of us. So my brand is WorkJoy, and so I have my website there. Mike, Sarah, and Aaron are from Sigrid Group, and they do retained searches. They do organization and leadership advisory and solutions, and they also do the really great engagement survey work. And then the Talent Strategy Collection, if you are running a small or medium-sized business, this is your go-to place, and it is a growing collection of downloadable skill-building resources. I am working on content to be added to there, so the content list keeps growing, but it's practical content ready to go to help augment your learning and development strategy.
And as Tina mentioned, and as Mike mentioned, we have run an engagement survey. If anyone would like the results of that survey, please let me know. I am more than happy to send them.
All right, and I love LinkedIn. If we're not linked already, find me on LinkedIn, as well as find these other amazing people on the call. A little bit of a pitch here. I was at SHRM in April, the Society for HR Management. I talked about engagement, and I poked at it in other ways. I talked about it as something we can tackle with micro practices, really small things that we can do. And it was a very fun presentation. If you want this, either do a quick scan of that or just send me a note. And then at SHRM in June, I talked about tackling engagement through the sweet spot of our 3 Ps. So how we can harness employee passions, priorities, and powers. So happy to share either one of those. That is the end of our time. I'll turn it back over to Aaron and Mike to help wrap us off. But again, thanks to everybody who joined. And this is an important topic, so please do not hesitate to reach out to any or all of us so that we can be here to support whatever you are doing in the workplace.